This is the most anticipated mission that NASA has attempted in decades, and I got invited by NASA to watch it. But before a rocket like this ever leaves the ground, there's an entire world most people never see. Machines that move thousands of tons, engines that transport this vehicle into space, and systems where even the smallest mistake changes everything. And all of it has to work, because once those engines ignite, there's no going back. I watched the crew head to the pad, I saw the places this rocket was built, and then I watched Artemis II leave Earth. The journey started at the Space Systems Processing Facility, where the future of space exploration is quietly being assembled. We met with NASA's Mark Wise to hear how NASA are working with other companies to push space exploration forward, but it turns out that rockets aren't the only thing you need to live on another world. This is the plant lab at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, where they're growing plants for space. We heard from Joya Massa and Trent Smith, who mentioned how plants in space can benefit astronauts all the way from the variety in their diet to psychological well-being too. Now, I found this really cool because we actually got to see the plants that they were studying, including these right here, strawberries. Now, these are actually the only sweet fruit that they're testing right now, but they did mention that they're also looking at blueberries too, because astronauts currently don't have any sweet treats. We also learned about missions that are sending plants to the moon as well, which I'm particularly excited about. And then I saw it for the first time, the Space Launch System, also known as the SLS. I saw it with my own eyes for the very first time, and let me tell you, it was honestly magnificent. This rocket was about to send 4 astronauts around the moon for the first time in over 50 years, and it's safe to say I was overcome with awe. I think when you look at this, you don't realise the scale of it. I remember thinking, I can't believe that there are going to be 4 astronauts on top of this thing. It stands at 98 metres tall, or 322 foot tall, and it's actually taller than the Statue of Liberty. That's me stood on top of myself 60 times. In terms of its weight is 5.75 million pounds, and in terms of Ellie's, that's 42,000 of me, which just puts it into perspective how incredibly immense this rocket is. Now, you see something of this scale and think, how on earth do you transport this thing? Well, I didn't have long to find out, because our next stop was the Crawler Transporter, the very vehicle that moved something of that immense scale to the pad. You could actually see the path as we drove up to it too, which I thought was really cool, knowing that this transporter had moved things up and down this path over decades from different missions and missions in the future, which is really, really cool to think about. The scale of this Crawler Transporter was equally as immense as the SLS, but that kind of makes sense because this is what is transporting the SLS to the pad. Now, given I am providing quantities in terms of measurements of myself, here's the height of one of the Crawler Transporter tracks against me. I'm 5'3" for reference. While I was there, I had a wonderful tour from John Giles, who actually mentioned that he'd saved a turtle from being crushed by this on one of his shifts. Now, there are actually 2 crawlers. This is crawler number 2, and it was built in 1966, but it has been upgraded to handle the weight of Artemis II. But the really cool thing about this as I was walking around is that this crawler and the other crawler have been used to carry the shuttle missions. How incredible is that? It weighs 6.6 million pounds and actually holds the Guinness World Record for the heaviest self-powered vehicle. Now, can you guess how fast it goes? It actually goes no faster than 1 mile per hour, which makes sense because it is moving literal rockets to the pad. It can also go up and down about 6 feet, which is exactly what it needs to do when collecting the SLS or rockets themselves. Now, interestingly, I learned that there's actually a 5-degree incline at the pad itself, and John mentioned that they have this levelling system on the Crawler Transporter that basically comprises of vertical cylinders that keeps the crawler level at all times. Of course, we don't want any spillages or rocket going overboard. Now, the steering itself is very different to how you'd imagine driving a car. The range is actually only plus or minus 6 degrees. But what about before it gets to the pad? Where is it assembled? Well, that happens inside NASA's Vehicle Assembly Building, which I got to tour as well. It stands at 160 meters tall. Again, in terms of Ellie's, that's like if I stood on top of myself 100 times, and it's actually the largest single-story building in the world. A fun fact is that the American flag that you can see on the side of the vehicle assembly building here is so big that the stripes are wide enough to fit a bus down them. The vehicle assembly building remains the only facility where assembly of a rocket occurred that carried humans beyond low Earth orbit and onto the moon, and for 30 years it also served as the final assembly point for space shuttle missions too. And it's the exact same place that Artemis II was built. As I walked around this building, the sheer scale was breathtaking. This is a video of us on the 16th floor, and the size even at that point still felt enormous. And for reference, there's 34 floors in the elevator. This bit right here is where Artemis II was assembled. We also had the chance to speak to people who were working in the vehicle assembly building, and this part was pretty cool. This right here is High Bay 4. Now, they don't stack rockets here currently, but they are testing the solid rocket boosters, or SRB for short. A solid rocket booster is what you'll see on either side of the Space Launch System. Their main goal is raw thrust. They essentially need to get this vehicle up off the pad as fast as it can to get out of the gravity well. As one of the engineers there said, it's 120 seconds worth of work, and it provides 80% of the thrust. A really fun fact I walked away with was that the checkered pattern that you can see on the side here, they're actually trackers, so cameras can track the vehicle as it ascends into orbit. There's actually a lot more that I learned during my time here, so for follow-on videos, make sure you subscribe or join for exclusive interviews as well. When I thought this day couldn't get any better, I then got a chance to stand inside a rocket engine. Yes, literally. Okay, but let's rewind for a second. This here is an RS-25 rocket engine. 4 of these powered the Artemis II mission, and each of them produce about 500,000 pounds of thrust, and they fire for about 8.5 minutes to get the crew into orbit. Interestingly, the hot gases that exit this nozzle are going at Mach 13, which is 9,600 miles per hour. That could take you from LA to New York in just 15 minutes. Something really fascinating that I found out about the RS-25 engines is that these rocket engines are actually shuttle heritage engines. Now, engine 2062 is unique among the 16 engines from the shuttle inventory, as it is never flown in space, although it does contain some components such as high and low pressure pumps and valves that have, which I thought was really cool. When we were there, they were saying that we have 4 engines, one of them is new and has never flown into space before, just like Jeremy Hansen, the astronaut. To wrap up the day before the launch, we even heard from Jared Isaacman, who is NASA's administrator. As I walked through Kennedy Space Center, every structure seemed to carry the weight of history, decades of ambition, failure, and triumph, etched into steel and concrete. It wasn't just a place of rockets, but a living legacy of human effort, where generations of relentless work quietly echoed in the shadow of every launch. And it honestly left me speechless. By day 2, the excitement was building. Today is launch day. The day actually started by appearing on the NASA live stream, which was pretty surreal, although rather entertaining to say the least, as we actually missed the cue to start cheering. I don't think I've ever cheered for that long in my entire life, but what a moment to be celebrating. After that, we headed inside NASA's Kennedy Space Center again, where we met some of the YouTube Collective people. I actually got to meet Scott Manley, who is an absolute icon. The room was filled with everything. We had a live stream to keep up to date with what was happening leading up to the launch, and we also had subject matter experts who were talking about things from spacesuits to lunar observations to human research. I learned about what types of observations the crew would be doing, and we also got to see the exact spacesuit that the Artemis II astronauts wore. It was absolutely incredible. A really cool experiment that I learned about that was happening on Artemis II was AVATAR. It stands for a Virtual Astronaut Tissue Analog Response. It's basically an organ-on-a-chip device that studies the effects of increased radiation and microgravity on human health. I'm actually really looking forward to hearing more about the results from this research now the crew are back, because the results could have benefits that advance personalised medicine. Now, like I mentioned, more content on this coming soon, so make sure you subscribe. After all of this, we then got to step outside to watch the crew drive by on their way to the pad, and that was just phenomenal. People even brought life-size cutouts of the crew, which was pretty cool to watch. After all of that, we were ready to head to our viewing area, but first we took a trip to the countdown clock. We all, of course, took some obligatory photos and then headed to our viewing area. Our viewing site was actually really cool. It was just ahead of the countdown clock and ahead of the press site, which I thought was quite nice. In the minutes leading up to the launch, I was a mix of anxious and excited and in disbelief. What I'd seen over the last few days really was just so inspiring and really made me so excited about the future of space exploration. But I guess all of that emotion was put on pause when we heard the 10-second countdown. I remember feeling my heart in my chest, and here's my raw reaction. It's safe to say that I said the word "oh my gosh" about 1,000,000 times in that, but honestly I still can't put into words how incredible that experience was. Here's actually a raw clip of my response afterwards that I haven't actually shared online anywhere just yet. I cannot believe that I have just witnessed history. That is actually incredible. I feel like I have shed so many tears watching that. It's sort of from over there, and this is where we were all set up. NASA Kennedy Space Center. I can't put into words how incredible that was. It's so bright. The SLS is so bright and so loud, and I cannot believe I've just witnessed history. Oh my gosh. So that was a small glimpse into my time at NASA's Kennedy Space Center, witnessing the build-up and the launch of Artemis II. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to NASA for this truly once-in-a-lifetime incredible experience. I am honestly still in so much shock from what I've seen. It was just incredible. I'm so grateful, and I really can't wait to share even more stories and videos that I was able to hear and see and capture whilst I was there. So like I said, make sure you subscribe, and thank you so much to everyone that watches my channel. I'll see you all in the next one.